Hey guys, what's up? It's your man Pete. So I've been getting this question a lot from my clients lately, or even just some of you viewers out there, and I understand why this question is coming about so often because so many of you are heading into your prime home buying years. Either you're getting married and forming families, or you've just always liked the idea of living in a house and you sort of want to upgrade or upsize from a condo or a townhouse into an actual house. You know, maybe something with a garage or a basement. And of course, buying a house in Toronto or the GTA is no simple task anymore, because homes are regularly cracking $1 million to even $1.5 million for just sort of your standard home. I've been in the business for 10 years and I literally have seen people who were able to buy houses the first go around, skipping the condo and the townhouse segments, but that's really not the case anymore for people who are just starting out. So I just thought I would give you all sort of a quick guideline of what I look for when I'm helping my clients buy houses. Sort of looking beyond the pretty sparkly lights, the fancy stage decor, and the perfectly crafted kitchens. But before we get into all of that, I'm just going to ask you all to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, feel free to leave us a comment, engage with the channel so that we can reach more people and help them out as well too. So I hope you stay tuned to this video and watch to the end, especially if you're thinking about buying a house, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, so most of you who are watching and following my channel probably fall in the millennial or the Gen X category. And I know this because I check my YouTube analytics fairly regularly. And while most of my audience is more interested in condos and townhouses, some of you are sort of ready to transition into houses as you're, beginning to settle down. Your employment status is getting a little bit more stable. And some of you are already living or own a condo and you're sort of ready to move on up and move up the property ladder, which is why this video is going to be super helpful to those of you who are starting to think about buying a house. Sort of helping you look at the different types and sort of what the benefits and pros and cons are of each. Of course, I've never wanted to tell you should
buy this one, buy that one, buy this one, spend all your money on this one.
But all I'm going to do is just give you some things to think about, just give you a little bit of a primer so that when you are out there, there are a few other things that we help you look at so that you can compare apples to apples. And of course, always looking at future resale potential. So the first thing we always want to determine is, of course, the budget. And this is something that you usually handle. You're back home, punching in the calculator, searching online, figuring out how much of a budget. I don't generally get too involved in all of that, but basically your budget and your price point is going to tell you what type of home or property you're going to be able to get into, whether it's a townhouse, it's a semi, or an actual single detached home. And if you're playing with a budget of around, say, $800,000 to like, 1.5 million, then you're probably going to be able to get into a pretty decent property. Of course, it depends on how much money you have on renovations, what conditions it's going to be in, and of course, what neighborhood and school zone it is in. So yeah, so somewhere between 800 to 1.5, you can still get into a nice detached home on the slightly older side, because the newer stuff is obviously more expensive, more than 1.5. But then sort of as you go maybe 1 or 2 steps down the property ladder, if you're okay with not getting a single detached home, a semi could be a decent option for you too, or even a townhouse or row house. It all depends on your budget. It all depends on the neighborhood you want to be in. We all have to make choices and make certain sacrifices. You will soon come to realize that very soon, whether you're working with someone else or whether you're working with me. And I don't want you to necessarily get stuck into thinking that you should only buy a single detached home, because that's kind of old school thinking. Like old people think that you always have to have this single detached lot, this huge piece of land with supreme privacy. And while most of the times these properties and the lot sizes are generally larger, but that's not always true. Sometimes semis or townhouses on the interiors can actually be larger than a single detached home. So that's the tricky part about buying homes in Toronto here, because we have so many different types and so many different categories that, sometimes the categories, they start getting confusing and it's hard to determine which is more important for you. So that's the challenge, and that's why people work with agents to help them make the best decision for their lifestyle in their budget at this point in time. Snapshots. For many of you who are already living in condos or townhouses, yeah, like you're surrounded by neighbors, especially when you're living in a condo, right? So if you're going from a condo to a semi where you only have one neighbor, with an attached wall beside you, that's already a very significant upgrade. But then you might want to think about situations like parking, whether it's a mutual driveway, private, or shared. But then there are some of you who have some PTSD, so back when you were living with your parents, or you actually have some current neighbor issues at at the moment, you know, those people generally want to extend themselves and go for a single detached house where there's very clear lines of boundaries and privacy and so forth. So, you know, ultimately it depends on your comfort level, but again, it's primarily driven by your budget. So obviously townhouses have also become really popular here in the city, and I've actually been saying it for years that this is going to be sort of the be-all and end-all home for many home buyers, homeowners here in Toronto, simply because detached properties are just going to be so expensive unless they're getting money from somewhere else like inheritance or parents are helping out, you know, that type of thing. We may begin to see Toronto start heading towards $2 million as an average for detached properties. You know, we're not that close to that yet. It's definitely not something that's out of the picture, and it could happen in, say, maybe the next 5 years or 10 years. But the most popular type you might want to consider if you're going from a condo to a townhouse is the executive townhouse. You know, I love these properties because they are modern, they're new, they have some maintenance fees, but not a lot, maybe like $100 or $200 a month. They'll typically have 3 or 4 bedrooms, 3 or 4 bathrooms, you know, a really nice kitchen, and you may even have an office downstairs, which is really important these days for your Zoom rooms, right? And some of them may even have 2-car parking garage and even a terrace like balcony attached to the back of the home. The unfortunate thing is that even in the suburbs, these types of townhouses are going for about $1.2 to $1.3 million already. So for people who are trying to get into townhouses for the first time and trying to spend $1.2 to $1.3 million, that's tough. That's really, really difficult to save for that down payment and to qualify for the mortgage. You know, usually people who are buying those are coming from condos or they had bought pre-construction years ago, but basically 1.2, 1.3 right now is actually pre-construction and resale prices in the suburbs. Okay, so then what we really look at, especially when you're buying a single detached home here in the city and in the suburbs, is the lot size, right? This has become so important ever since the pandemic started, and this was actually even important, you know, before the pandemic. Because so typically the wider the lot or the wider the land that you get, usually you'll get a bigger house, and that happens when you have, you know, newer construction. But the older stuff, yeah, you know, you will see like small properties on a big piece of land, which is why it's understandable why you'll tear down these houses and maybe build 2 houses instead. But with the demand for more houses and more yard and just, you know, more functionality at your property, this is a yardstick and a measuring stick that we use very often. Buyers don't really look at it that often, but when we're helping our clients purchase properties, we look at the lot frontage because you want to be able to see what you can do with that property. You know, what are the clear lines, what are the boundaries between you and the neighbors, and ultimately sometimes it affects the size of the home that you're purchasing too. And to be honest, 2, 3, 4 feet in a house makes a huge difference in terms of the living function and space and size for your growing brood. And your typical standard lot in Toronto is 50 feet wide by 100 feet deep. That's your standard lot size. And in today's world and in today's market, that is considered large because you could actually build 2 homes. You could build semis side by side in that lot size versus just having, you know, one home sit on that large piece of land. And of course, with the new pre-construction developments that we see in the suburbs, you know, builders build, you know, like 36 feet wide by, you know, under 90 feet, which, you know, feels a little bit small. It is a little bit deficient on the backyard space. You're definitely not going to be able to put a pool in there. But many homeowners are not complaining because, you know, they still get, you know, a big functional house, you know, possibly 2,500 to 3,000 square feet on that lot size. You know, it's going to be a 2-car garage. You're going to have a basement. And then when there's less land around the house, you know, sometimes it's actually less maintenance too, you know, so to each his own, right? Some people need huge lot sizes. Some people think it's too much work and too much maintenance, you know, so that's why we do recommend certain types of townhouses like the executive townhouse where, you know, all that's just taken care of for you. You may not have a backyard or you'll have a pretty small backyard, but you know, if you're working and you're a professional and, you know, you don't have time to take care of the property or you simply just don't want to, and you want to enjoy the property, I would say you should go for that type of house too. Okay, so exterior of the house is something you might want to pay attention to as well. You know, most houses in Toronto and the GTA are either brick or stone because our homes need to be able to withstand a zombie apocalypse or possible alien invasions from another planet. But from time to time, you will see vinyl or aluminum siding houses, which typically are not as desired. They're typically sort of more lower budget homes. They still look nice. They still function just as nicely. The houses are not any colder because of vinyl siding, but it's just that they need a little bit more maintenance and they fall apart and need to be replaced probably about every 5 or 10 years. And then sometimes what you'll see is a stucco finish. So for those of you who don't know what a stucco finish is, it's a smooth finish typically over brick, and it makes the house just look brand new. It gives it sort of that high-end look and high-end finish. You love the look of stucco. However, it's not as strong or durable as brick or stone. And typically typically you'll see that being used for older houses where they kind of want to cover up, really old, ugly, or damaged bricks. So it looks great, but you might want to have an inspector or a contractor take a look at it just to see if there's any damage, if there's any water seeping through the property, because once that stucco is covered onto the brick, you can't really see what the damage or if there's any foundational issues on the outside of the home. But yeah, stucco is nice in warmer countries or warmer climates, but in the winter climates, they hold up quite well, but they just require a little bit more maintenance because of the cracking and the breaking. Our temperatures are very extreme here in Canada, so we have to take those things into consideration when we're buying a home. Okay, so the roof is definitely something you really have to pay attention to as well. I know it's so boring, it's a roof, like, god damn it, like, why are we talking about roofs and shingles here? You can't even see it most of the time, right? But it's such an important part of the home, and for those of you who aren't looking at houses or you never even think about buying a house, yeah, whatever, forget it, right? You don't need to think about a roof. But for those of you who are sort of in that process right now and you're about to buy a home and you're looking at homes, the roof is super, super important, because if it's not maintained or taken care of or replaced recently, whenever there's roof issues, you have house issues. And whenever there's water damage anywhere coming through the roof and it's like trickling down, going through all the floors in your house, that is a very, very bad thing. And it's very expensive to repair. So, pretty much after 10 or 15 years is when you want to start looking into, changing or at least having someone go up there and check to see if everything looks okay up there. From a warranty perspective, they'll say roofs can last like 20 or 25 years, just to sort of sell it and market it to you. But that's sort of under better normal weather conditions. Here, again, we have harsh conditions, so pretty much around 10 or 15 years is when you have to start looking into changing or repairing and replacing the shingles on your roof. I know, boring, but it's so important. And then also another thing you might want to consider is tree branches, right? So we all want to live in nice, lush, leafy areas where there's a lot of mature trees. But then at the end of the day, when you're buying a house, having a lot of trees around your house is not always a great thing, because you have branches, right? You have trees growing and they're scraping your rooftops, and those are the things that actually reduce the life of your roof and your shingles. So just something to consider, because when it's windy, it's like scraping and like ripping off shingles during those harsh, crazy winter months. And then branches and sticks are also a very good bridge for our little critters and creatures out there to jump onto your roof, hide in your attic because it's nice, warm, and toasty, and have some babies. Just to let you know, squirrels are very dangerous for your house. Once they get inside, they can cause some serious damage. So yeah, so just make sure you have like a handyman or an arborist, somebody to help you clean up the branches and leaves around your house, and that will help you reduce the amount of critter activity in or near your house. Squirrels. Who would have thought, right? Parking and garage. Now, this topic is somewhat controversial because everyone's in a different stage in their life and they have a different opinion about whether you should own a vehicle or not. Some of you who are living in the core of the city are very much against cars. Like, you don't have it, you don't want it, it's expensive, you never use it, so you're better off just walking, cycling, grabbing an Uber. But for those of us who grew up with cars and love cars, we just can't imagine not functioning without it, and especially if you live in the suburbs. But when you get married and you have kids and you form households, I think having a car is really important, because you got to be able to bring your kids places. You got to be able to drop them off at school, take them to classes, do all types of stuff. So, at least having one car in the house is pretty important. And having one spot for you to park your car is also pretty important. But for me, I'm curious how some of you are living downtown or living in the core of the city with no car, and you have a family and you have kids and you need to buy groceries. I'm curious to know how you guys are functioning, how you're doing that. And please feel free to leave us a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you and see how your living style compares to some of the other people that we help our clients buy for. Okay, and last but not least, basements are really important. Always have been here in Toronto, because buying a house is expensive. Being able to afford all the expenses like utilities, taxes, mortgage payments, all that stuff is pretty important. As rental options are slimming and rental prices are continuing to go back up again, having a basement rental apartment suite is valuable for a property. So in the end, if you're purchasing one that has a separate entrance and a built-in kitchen and washroom, and it's got rentability to it and you can instantly bring in income, you will end up paying more for that property overall in general. But at the end of the day, it makes the property more valuable too. So if you're still fairly young, you're single, or you're just a couple, or you don't have that many kids yet, you just have a dog or something like that, and you are okay with sharing your house with somebody and bringing in that extra income to support the mortgage, that's usually when it's done, right? People don't usually do that that when they have kids already, because you actually need the space, privacy, the noise, all of that stuff. And then what'll typically happen is they'll rent it out for a few years, get that income, everything becomes stable, your employment situation improves, you get a promotion or something like that, and then all of a sudden, you want to have that space back, you can take it back. You can send the tenant packing, and then you can claim that space again, and now you have a bigger house. So yeah, it's just lots of different sort of options and things that we help our clients think about. We generally go through this, discovery phase, right? We ask them what they think is the most important. Sometimes that changes throughout the process depending on the properties that we see, but generally as professional realtors, we look at the most important things, the biggest priorities, the things that are the most important for you that you simply cannot ignore, and we make sure we satisfy those things for you. So that's how we work, that's how our process is. But then at the same time, in the background, we're looking at things like lot sizes, we're looking at all the different ways the property functions, and whether when you're ready to move on, whether this property is marketable, and how much we think you're going to be able to get for it at some point in the future. So I know it was a long one, but thank you all for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Please be sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and hopefully the next time we load a video, you're going to see that one as well too. And we appreciate you guys watching and contacting us for service. We really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one, and hope you enjoy the rest of the summer. Talk to you soon, and bye for now.